Hello, I'm Shelley Schmidt. I'm a community pulmonologist and the director of our Pulmonary Fibrosis Care Center. In my role, I met a patient with popcorn lung who introduced me early on to what would become the vaping epidemic. While he was rightly concerned about the toxic effects of the chemicals in these new devices, the nicotine had me worried. Dr. Luther-Terry released the first Surgeon General's report on the health consequences of smoking in 1964. Over 60 years, the data supports cigarette smoking as a cause of 4 out of the 5 leading causes of death in the United States: cardiovascular disease, cancer, 13 different forms, COPD, and stroke. In addition, cigarette smoking causes multiple poor surgical outcomes, including surgical site infections, lack of bone fusion, sepsis, respiratory failure, heart attacks, and death. Cigarette smoking causes 1,300 deaths per day in the United States. 1,300 per day. More than 5 times the death rate at the height of the opioid crisis. 3 to 4 airliners falling out of the sky every day. If that were happening, the FAA would shut the airline industry down. And yet here we are. So with all this overwhelming data, the question we all have is, why won't our patients quit? Tobacco leaves were cultivated at the first Jamestown settlement, so we knew that nicotine was special very early on. And over 400 years later, these new unregulated devices hit the market, promising to help. I've had legislators ask me, why do we bother regulating nicotine at all? Isn't it the same thing as coffee? I want to be clear. Nicotine is the 3rd most addictive substance known to man. 2/3 of people who try nicotine become dependent on it at some point during their lifetime. When nicotine enters the bloodstream, it binds here in our instinctual brain, which we actually share with lower mammals. Our instinctual brain is responsible for distinguishing safety from threat. If we have food, family, we're snug in our burrow, this part of the brain is signaling instinctual safety. However, when presented with a saber-toothed tiger, this part of the brain will signal instinctual threat. This is the part of the brain that makes the hair stand up on the back of our neck. When nicotine binds to the ventral tegmental area, it signals instinctual safety. The higher the concentration of nicotine, the stronger the safety signal. Cigarettes and vapes are engineered to deliver a high concentration of nicotine very fast. The problem is that a lack of nicotine begins to signal instinctual threat, which can manifest as anxiety, anger, or frustration in our patients. So in our patients who are trying to quit smoking, the longer it's been since their last nicotine exposure, the more threat signal they start to feel. And within 3 puffs of a commercial cigarette, that ventral tegmental area's nicotinic receptors are completely saturated, and it all goes away. Instinctual safety. Nicotine is an incredible anxiety drug, which is why people have used it for centuries. After nicotine hijacks the instinctual brain, it signals to our motivational brain, the nucleus accumbens, which houses our reward and risk-seeking behavior. Dopamine surges when we have an unexpected positive experience. But this area signals frustration when we don't get what we expected. The lack of nicotine leads to emotional consequences of the unfulfilled compulsion. This is where heroin acts in the brain. While the nicotine hijack is signaling to the motivational brain, it also signals to the emotional centers of the brain and then to the prefrontal cortex. This is the addiction pathway for nicotine. Nicotine motivates us to get more nicotine and causes emotional consequences, anger and anxiety, if we do not. And what's more, Dr. Donald Hebb taught us that cells that fire together, wire together. Nicotine acts as an exogenous trophic factor to influence gene transcription and circuitry. Nicotine addiction hardwires the instinctual midbrain to the emotional thalamus. The striatal and prefrontal cortex are hardwired and help explain why patients feel this way for many years. So how does big tobacco do it? Tobacco companies process the harvested tobacco leaves upon arrival at the plant to remove the nicotine. They then add the nicotine back in with toxins like ammonia, which creates freebase nicotine, and with chemicals like menthol to reduce harshness so people can inhale more smoke. The amount of nicotine that reaches the instinctual brain depends on the amount of freebase nicotine present. The more freebase nicotine, the stronger that safety signal. The nicotine profile for each cigarette in that pack is exactly the same. Each cigarette is engineered specifically for that manufacturer and is intentionally varied by brand, which results in the brand preference. In the United States versus Philip Morris, the Honorable Judge Kessler found the tobacco companies had intentionally designed cigarettes to make them more addictive and then spent 50 years hiding those facts. They were found culpable, resulting in the Tobacco Master Settlement, a minimum payment of $206 billion to cease marketing activity and release their data to the public. This knowledge reshaped my view of someone who smokes and helped reshape how my patients see themselves. Smoking cessation starts with education and empowerment. I discuss how nicotine works to all of my patients using tobacco products to help them realize that this isn't just about willpower. This is not a habit. These are billion-dollar corporations who spent decades perfecting tools to addict the American people, protected by our elected officials in exchange for jobs, tax dollars, and campaign contributions. We recommend enlisting the help of a tobacco treatment specialist who has had additional training in helping people with cessation. Part of the state's Michigan's tobacco settlement money finances the 1-800-QUIT-NOW-QUIT line, which is staffed by former smokers and former e-cigarette users to provide counseling and free nicotine replacement. And last, there's pharmacologic therapy. Pharmacologic therapy typically begins with nicotine replacement, the purpose of which is to retrain the brain. It's important for patients to understand how nicotine replacement is going to work because they assume if it doesn't feel like a cigarette, it's not working. But in this top graph, we can see the high steep peak of nicotine delivery to the ventral tegmental area. In the bottom portions, to the left is a nicotine lozenge, to the right is a nicotine patch. As you can see, neither of these reaches the concentrations of a traditional cigarette, nor is the delivery very fast. Thus, the ventral tegmental area is experiencing more of a lump of nicotine rather than a high peak. Patients will not feel that intense safety signal, but importantly, as we retrain their brains toward the lump, they won't feel that intense threat signal either. We often combine patches and lozenges, whatever amount of nicotine meets their needs. Anxiolytics are a crucial part of tobacco cessation because patients are using tobacco to treat their anxiety. These patients have long-standing anxiety disorders, and they often need a combination of counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy, and anxiolytics. Bupropion has the FDA indication, but any medications appropriate for treating generalized anxiety disorder are appropriate. And lastly, there's Chantix, varenicline, which binds to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor as both a partial agonist and antagonist, blocking nicotine from binding. But because it functions as a partial agonist, patients do not experience the threat. Many patients on varenicline report that they do not feel the urge to smoke at all. One area where we undermine ourselves in medicine is on length of therapy. This is a lifelong addiction, and treating it often cannot be completed in 2, 4, or 6 weeks. The duration of nicotine replacement therapy, anxiolytics or varenicline, is flexible and should last as long as needed. This is a specific harm reduction strategy aimed at cumulative avoidance of commercial nicotine products. We need to challenge ourselves. We do not allow someone to leave the hospital with a systolic blood pressure of 220, and yet we let people walk out the door every day with little conversation about the product in their life, causing 4 of the 5 leading causes of death in America. Smoking cessation therapy should be free, accessible, and prescribed in hospitals prior to discharge. It is cost-effective, and in cost-effectiveness parlance, that means it not only saves you money, it improves outcomes. Vaccines don't even do that. This isn't just the Europeans telling us this anymore. This is your U.S. Surgeon General. We're going to take a little breather. A quick break back to the good old days prior to COVID, prior to all the tumult in the world, back to 2015. In 2015, the CDC published a report showing that the rate of high school student smoking had decreased to 10.8%. This was the lowest rate since the CDC started collecting data, and it was nearly 7% below where they expected to be by 2015. Public health circles were celebrating that tobacco may finally be a winnable battle. That same summer, Public Health England issued a report about e-cigarettes, stating that e-cigarettes were 95% less harmful than smoking combustible tobacco. In response, the National Health Service and associated agencies started advertising and incentivizing smokers in the UK to transition to e-cigarettes. However, it didn't take long for e-cigarette manufacturers to capitalize on 95% less harmful, to meaning 95% safer, and finally just plain safe. But we have to remember that cigarettes kill 1,300 people every day. That is a very low bar. Serial killers are technically safer than cigarettes in the United States, but I don't think any of us want to meet one. Safer did not mean safe. That same summer, Juul launch parties sprung up in major cities all across the United States and provided their products for free to anyone who walked through the door, regardless of age. And it didn't take long for us to get to this.
In case you're new, everyone at my school, Juul,
something that is literally sweeping the nation. Everywhere I go, it is a whole thing.
Yo, what is going on, guys? What's up, guys?
Today's video is gonna be a Juul sesh. We got the mango pod,
The cool cucumber,
fruit medley.
I've got this creme pod because I thought it would be festive.
It tastes great.
Well, if you want a head rush, definitely the Juul.
That's really strong.
Oh my god, bro, give me the biggest neck buzz.
The Juul challenge. You gotta hit this thing as many times as you can.
We're doing the Juul Hotbox Insane Nick Buzz Challenge, you dig?
I got some accessories.
Juul wraps.
Type in charging case for Juul.
Rolo bag.
Sorry, drop.
Ghost stick.
This one is watermelon. It is literally so good.
By the fall of 2018, the National Youth Health Survey results were ringing alarm bells about the effects of e-cigarettes on youth tobacco use. By the 2019 survey, half of all high schoolers and a quarter of all middle schoolers had tried tobacco, and a third of high schoolers were daily users. The 2019 data actually comes from surveys administered in 2018. So in 3.5 years, Juul hadn't just erased decades of public health gains. This was the worst youth tobacco use in our history. A patient of mine and I gave talks in high schools throughout West Michigan at this time, and the students would tell you everyone is doing it. 50% was laughably low. How are vapes different? Cigarette chemistry is a basic pH which irritates the throat and airways, limiting how much someone can inhale. But vapes can control the chemistry to a neutral pH, so they're not irritating to most people, removing any natural limitations on inhalation. This leads to extraordinarily high blood nicotine levels. Escobars, one of the current devices of the vaping epidemic, contains 750 milligrams of nicotine, equivalent to 2 cartons or 400 cigarettes in one handheld device. This industry is so unregulated, your teenager can purchase this with a Visa gift card online and get it shipped to your doorstep in a nondescript cardboard box, as was demonstrated by Stanford researchers. This is a 24-year-old who came into our hospital in 2019 with a vaping-induced lung injury. This is a coronal image, a slice through the center of the chest. The black upside-down V is the trachea, and branching to main stem bronchi to the right and left. On CT, the lung should look charcoal gray, with just the branching of the vessels apparent. The top portions of the lung are dark, as they should be, but all the center section of bright white is the lung injury. He spent 7 days on a ventilator in our ICU. Our colleagues at Henry Ford performed a double lung transplant on a 17-year-old with a vaping-induced lung injury. The surgeon is pointing to the windpipe on a coronal CT image similar to that of our patient, only there's no aerating lung tissue on that image, only airways. It is all white because the lungs are completely damaged. To the right, under his arm, we see the post-transplant chest x-ray. Lung transplant has a median survival of 7 years. When the CDC stopped collecting reports at the onset of the COVID pandemic in February 2020, there had been 2,800 cases reported and 68 deaths. In our hospital, we continue to see about 1 admission a month for vaping-induced lung injuries, but since there's no longer a place to report, we do not have national data. This brings me to the lungs are designed only for clean air. They cannot handle pollution, wildfire smoke, too much air freshener, just clean air. The toxicity associated with e-cigarettes stems from how they function. The battery heats a wicking material. Juul used asbestos or glass fibers known to cause lung scarring and cancer. The hot wicking material then aerosolizes the liquid to inhale it. The liquid is comprised of nicotine salts dissolved in propylene glycol, which when heated produces formaldehyde. Flavorings have been shown to impair the immune system, cause lung inflammation and scarring. All of this is housed in metal casings which have been made from cancer-causing metals such as lead, chromium, nickel, and cadmium. THC complicates this even more because THC needs an oil-based diluent. The original vaping-induced lung injuries were attributed to THC being dissolved in vitamin E acetate, which is face cream. THC can also dissolve in other oils, such as coconut oil, but just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe in the lung. THC vapes effectively spray oil all throughout the lung. The basic scientists are all over this. How vapes affect the airway epithelium, impair the immune system, disrupt sputum production and mucociliary clearance, and impair the vascular system. Additionally, the presence of nicotine at these elevated blood levels is highly toxic. Nicotine by itself impairs the immune system of the airway and lungs. It causes airway hyperreactivity and remodeling. It causes tachyarrhythmias, seizures, and sudden cardiac death. I cared for an 18-year-old woman in our ICU on life support for 4 days in status epilepticus, only to find the cause was nicotine toxicity from extensive vaping. Her parents had been buying the vape since she was 16 years old because the vapes managed her anxiety. America's poison centers get about 700 calls a month of nicotine poisonings, many from toddlers and very young children attracted to the flavors. Nicotine poisonings can be lethal in this age group. We discussed vaping-induced lung injuries, but the hospitalizations are just the tip of the iceberg. In these individuals who vape or smoke, we see more infections, prolonged infections. They develop asthma or have worsening in their asthma. They also develop a decline in exercise performance. The internet is filled with stories of students who lost D1 scholarships due to their vaping addictions, along with increasing cough, chest pain, and shortness of breath. As an example of how vapes impair innate immunity, researchers at Stanford found youth e-cigarette use increased the risk of COVID-19 infection 5-fold, and they were 5 times more likely to get symptoms. What protected youth from serious COVID-19 infections was their strong innate immunity. They cleared the virus before the aberrant adaptive responses we saw in older people could take hold. But e-cigarettes removed that advantage. What if someone doesn't seem to have these effects I mentioned? What about long-term use of vapes? This is a functional MRI demonstrating ventilation in the lungs of 3 different patients. The blue color represents normal ventilation. The bottom row is a healthy patient whose lung tissue displays lots of blue, lots of normal airflow. The top row is a patient 1 month after their hospitalization for a vaping-induced lung injury. Here we see patches of black, areas of the lung that are still damaged, resulting in areas of poor ventilation. The middle row is someone who does not have symptoms but has been using vapes over time. What we see here are black rinds along the top edges of the lung and patches of poor ventilation in the upper regions of the lung. This is exactly where we would expect to see emphysema, which is the disintegration of lung tissue in someone who smokes cigarettes. So let's go back to the CT scan of the 24-year-old man I admitted with a lung injury, but now I'm going to direct you to the lung apices, where we will find black holes within the charcoal gray tissue. This is emphysema on a CT scan. This is lung tissue disintegration in a 24-year-old. Normally, we would expect more than a decade of pack-a-day smoking to see this from traditional cigarettes. The cardiologists, not to be outdone, have published their own statement from the American Heart Association on the cardiovascular effects of vaping, including endothelial dysfunction, platelet activation, coronary vasoconstriction, and ventricular arrhythmias, all increasing the risk for myocardial infarction or sudden cardiac death. There has been a mountain of research produced, even in the last 10 years since these devices hit the market, and there's surely more to come. But there's no reason to believe these patients will be spared the long-term health consequences. We are already seeing them. These companies are not marketing to me on my Dave Matthews Pandora channel or my British Bake Off Instagram feed. They are not interested in me. Why the focus on teenagers? When we're born, our brains can do anything. We can learn to speak English or Italian. During development, our brain myelinates pathways that are used repeatedly while pruning away unused pathways. So if we're raised in an English-speaking household, our brain prunes away the pathways we would have needed to speak Italian. The brain does this to help become faster and more efficient at what we want to do. We can still learn to speak Italian when we're older, but we have to do it with the pathways for speaking English, so we will have an accent. The brain does not know the difference between a pathway like learning a foreign language or an addiction pathway. It only knows the pathway is being used often, and therefore is important. Repeated vaping during middle and high school years myelinates or hardwires the nicotine addiction into the brain, creating a lifelong nicotine addiction. No amount of nicotine is safe in the developing brain. That's your U.S. Surgeon General. This is a picture of that brain development with the blues and purples signifying myelination here at age 20 on the right, and the reds, yellows, greens signifying unmyelinated brain that's still under development on the left. Our middle schoolers and high schoolers are here. Still room for development. Nicotine has more significant, durable, damaging effects on adolescent brains compared to adult brains. There's increased sensitivity to nicotine in the adolescent brain, and the higher the dosage, the more pronounced the impact. Nicotine impacts complex thinking, memory, and attention. Nicotine has always been a gateway drug and increases the use of other addictive substances. We saw that within 3 years of nicotine vapes launching, we now had THC vapes causing the lung injury epidemic. Anything that can be liquefied can go into these devices, any drug. Nicotine-addicted youth have increased risk-taking in driving and relationships, increased interactions with the legal system, and poor socioeconomic outcomes compared to their non-nicotine-addicted peers. Sadly, the nicotine remodels their serotonin system involved in mood disorders, creating enhanced anxiety and fear, the very thing they are using the nicotine to treat. The best way to create a lifelong nicotine addiction is to hardwire it into the brain, and the best time to do that is during brain development. 90% of adults who smoke daily began before age 18. So when I see a patient in clinic who's had part of their lung carved out for lung cancer and they still smoke, this is when they started. But we also know brain development can continue into our mid to late 20s, making our young adults susceptible. Treating nicotine addiction is hard. It can be even more complicated in teenagers due to societal and developmental differences from adults. The peer group is central to this developmental age and is often why kids start. School tobacco policies are often written to suspend students or kick them off sports teams, making it less likely they will come forward. And then there's the parents. When we gave talks on vaping to students and parents around West Michigan, there were basically two kinds of parents we met. Those who would say, "Oh, I'm sure it's happening, but it's not my child." Or those who were looking down at their shoes, telling us how their son or daughter could not stop. This is a no judgment zone. Whether or not your kid vapes has nothing to do with whether or not your kid is good or bad, or if you are a good or bad parent. These are billion-dollar companies who know exactly what they're doing to addict your kid. This is a battle, but against the companies. This is a campaign for our kids to support them getting to the other side to live their lives addiction-free. Now, some parents absolutely enable, and the messaging is, it doesn't matter what you think about cigarettes, vaping, or nicotine, no amount of nicotine is safe in the developing brain. Until their brain is fully developed, no addictive substances. Addictive substances in the developing brain can imprison them to a lifetime of addiction, and that's not fair. No nicotine, no THC, no alcohol, period. Another complicating factor in treatment for teenagers is that none of our pharmacologic therapy is FDA approved for children. This puts pediatricians and family physicians in a tight spot. But we have to face facts. Vapes are not FDA approved for children either. Harm reduction may need to be considered with an informed risk and benefit discussion with patient and parents if abstinence is not immediately possible. Because the good news is we know how to do this. We need clear, consistent messaging. No addictive substance is safe in the developing brain, period. We need to acknowledge the central role of the peer group, educating the peer group and supporting their quitting together, holding each other accountable. I tell high school students there are 2 reasons someone offers you a vape. The first is they're a dealer and they don't care about you. They're pretty easy to spot. The second is a friend and they're in trouble. They want to normalize their use of the vape by having others around them accept it. And that is the time to intervene, to say you care about them. These things are no good, and how can we help them quit? Take care of each other. We have to promote strategies for kids to come forward and seek treatment without fear of punishment. We understand, and they understand, they can't vape in the bathroom at school. But there has to be some outlet to get them help. They're not vaping in school because they want to. They're doing it because they're addicted. Life is anxiety-provoking. We need to offer and model healthy alternatives to managing that anxiety, whether it's by exercise, music, friends, mindfulness, spirituality, hobbies, family counseling, or medication. As adults, as parents, as a society, we need to model this. If we use substance to manage our own anxiety, our kids will use substance to manage theirs. An exciting advancement in nicotine addiction treatment has been texting programs utilizing cognitive behavioral therapy to help quit. The Truth Initiative, developed from dollars from the original tobacco settlement, developed a text program to support people in quitting nicotine. And a randomized control trial of 1,503 adolescents, Truth Initiative's This Is Quitting app showed a statistically significant increase in quit rate at 7 months by 35% over the control arm, in a cohort where 76% would meet criteria for nicotine addiction. This added to their prior randomized control trial of 2,500 young adults showing a statistically significant 24% quit rate compared to 18% in the control arm. But what about the original sales pitch that vaping would help people quit combustible cigarettes? The American Journal of Public Health Research publishes analyses for legislators and public health decision makers. They reviewed 64 studies and concluded consumer e-cigarette use was not associated with quitting combustible tobacco. In randomized control trials where the e-cigarette was free and provided with smoking cessation counseling, there was a significant improvement in quit rate. But getting back to what we already know, that smoking cessation programs work and are cost effective. Their conclusion was that e-cigarettes should not be approved as consumer products as a treatment for nicotine addiction. So what does our landscape look like in Michigan? Current state, our indoor air quality laws have not been updated to prevent indoor use of e-cigarettes. There is no licensure for sellers of tobacco in Michigan. You can literally sell tobacco off your back porch, and that would be legal. Without licensure or taxation, there's no statewide enforcement. This is an area Michigan voters actually agree on. 65% of Michigan voters believe in legislation to protect our children from nicotine addiction, even at the expense of adult rights to purchase flavored tobacco. And this was true across all demographics and political affiliations. So we have work to do. We need regulation, taxation, enforcement, and an indoor air quality update. Numerous support resources are available to assist individuals in quitting nicotine. Aside from the Truth Initiative's texting program, there's My Life, My Quit, Quit the Hit, an Instagram tool, and the State of Michigan's Quit Line. Additionally, the federal government has a nicotine addiction text line, the Smoke Free Text program. One of the challenges presented when vapes entered the market was the absence of regulatory measures to protect our youth. If you would like more information or wish to get involved in protecting our children from a lifetime fighting addiction, there are multiple organizations actively working towards this goal. Thank you for your valuable time.